Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Dean Woodbeck from InCommon and Internet 2, and this is our webinar concerning the certificate service. I want to point out that we will take questions via the chat. I'm getting a message, can't hear you. Is that the case or not? Can you see my mouth move, but no sound? Hear you fine. All right,
You're good.
great. Excellent. Okay. So where was I? Well, I was talking about the chat. So when you click on that little chat button at the bottom of your screen, if you would, you'll see that it defaults to all panelists. And if you could change that, there's a drop-down menu to everyone. Then everyone will see your questions, and then everyone can see the answers if it's answered in the chat, or if it's not, we'll answer it. The appropriate person will answer it on audio, video. So I would like to welcome our friends from Sectigo today, Caleb Kennedy and Nick France and Abul Salek. And we will start out with a presentation from Abul. So take it away, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abul Salek. I'm Director of Product Management at Sectigo. I would be talking about the automation offering tool sets that we have from Sectigo. As you know, that in the certificate management arena, the SSL certificate lifetime is being shortened. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But when you have certificates that are only 398 days long at the max, then there is a more and more need of automating the lifecycle management. Some of the certificates could be as short as few days. First, I want to show you the overall automation tool set that we have for you. And that's the chart that I'm showing right now. From the left to right, we have adopted the ACME protocol as a great vehicle of achieving automation. ACME, as you know, is RFC 8555 based standard. So there are lots of tools available out there. At our end, we have implemented the server side of the protocol, as well as enhanced a lot of client side tools as well. I'll be speaking about that more a little bit later. In addition to ACME, we have a Sectigo custom agent that has been there for a long time. Some of you are probably using it already, and it can handle a number of web servers and similar software out there. Then I will talk about the DevOps tool sets and how and what we offer to automate your DevOps rollout of certificates and certificate management. And after that, I'll be touching on the REST API that we offer from our certificate management system. REST API, as you know, you can write your own application and essentially integrate with Sectigo Certificate Manager over the REST API. So that is a very handy interface to have. And additionally, we have integration with Azure Key Vault as well as ServiceNow. I'll be touching on those points as well. So first, let me talk about ACME. So the diagrams on the left-hand side is talking about the overall architecture. With ACME, we can automate the lifecycle management of publicly trusted SSL certificates. In October, we'll roll out a privately trusted SSL certificate management over ACME as well. And the privately trusted one will be talking to the private CA from Sectigo on the cloud. But as an architectural components, ACME client is going to talk to our certificate manager. Certificate manager has an extension, ACME server that we have built. It's sitting on the Sectigo cloud, so you don't get to see it. You don't need to see it, but you'll be able to control it via the certificate manager. At the back end, we have the public CAs as well as the private CA that we will roll out next month. Essentially, from the client all the way to the certificate manager to the backend PKI, everything will work seamlessly when you leverage a ACME tool. Now, I know I said that ACME is a standard-based protocol. However, when we implemented it, we wanted to add some value-add features. In order to do that, we have bound that protocol to the SCM account so that you have administrative control, and you can also control who can reach out to Sectigo Cloud over an ACME tool, and that way you can essentially make sure that there is no unauthorized use of that feature. We have also made our system such that you can leverage the workflows that are built into SCM. You can, once you issue certificates via ACME, you'd be able to see those certificates via the reporting capability, via the discovery feature that are already available in SCM. And we have taken care of DV, OV, and EV type of SSL certificates to be managed via ACME, which is kind of a comprehensive suite. As you may know, that some vendors are just focusing on DV, others are focusing on OV and EV only, but we try to do a comprehensive job back to back. And finally, I wanted to mention that in the DevOps world, if you are familiar with the Kubernetes Cert Manager tool, we are integrated with that tool quite seamlessly over the ACME protocol. So we are consistent, or we can interoperate with Cert-Manager tool that is available in the DevOps area. I know that ACME is a standards-based protocol, and people have written tons of client-side tools. In my last count, there were about 150 or so, very large number, but we wanted to make sure that a handful of them are vetted or tested by us before we claim official support. That's the list of it in this chart. At the top, Certbot is highly popular among ACME users. We made sure that Certbot can be utilized against our ACME server. Same thing goes with Lego and ACME 4J for the Java environment. Cert Manager, I mentioned it, that it's available in the Kubernetes environment. And finally, next month, we are going to roll out a Sectigo specific tool to be able to manage Citrix ADC servers over ACME. So those are the top level tools that we are focusing on right now. Just to give you an architectural overview how ACME works over Certbot, let's assume that you are using Apache web server. What you are going to do is you are going to go and download Certbot from their website and install the tool. Once you install it, Certbot actually has a config file. We have instructions in our admin guide how to set those configurations. In those configurations, you actually need a kind of a credential set that will be provided to you by your SCM admin. So you just plug it into that config file. Once you do step number 1 and 2, things are already good to go. And then if you need to issue a certificate, you come to your command line and essentially just execute an issuance command. It's well documented in the Certbot document, so I'm not gonna mention it here. And once that is done, Certbot is going to reach out to Sectigo Cloud, retrieve the certificate, and then it will push the certificate into the Apache web server. That's the installation step of the whole process. So as you can see, overall, once you have issued the command, the rest happens magically and seamlessly without your intervention, essentially. So that is the issuance command. And Certbot provides another command to set up auto renewal, which is very, very powerful, because you would want the system to be set up such that you don't have to worry about when the certificate is going to be expiring. Once you set up auto renewal, the tool is going to wake up X number of days before the certificate expires. The default value there is 30 days, but you can change it. And then it will reissue or renew that certificate, reaching out to Sectigo Cloud, and installation will be done by that process as well without you having to issue any kind of a manual command. So that's the beauty of it. It's like fully automated renewal. On top of issuance and renewal, Certbot supports the revocation command as well, replacement command, so on and so forth. More or less, the whole lifecycle management can be performed by Certbot. Their documentation is quite comprehensive. We have documented the major steps in our SCM admin guide as well. So those would be your two sources for references. Now, the second agent that we have, we call it the network agent. It's been there for a long, long time. It's capable of automatically rolling out certificates to a small number of applications. Apache is one of them, IIS, Tomcat, and F5. Those are the devices and the applications we take care of natively with this agent. I must tell you as an FYI that Certbot is being revamped this year to support Windows, and they will support IIS soon from the auto installation perspective. So it's good to keep that in mind. All right. So one of my previous slide referred to ServiceNow. As you know, ServiceNow has emerged as one of the top tools or platforms to manage IT service management, right? We have created a ServiceNow app this year. This app, once you install it in the ServiceNow portal, you would be able to do the lifecycle management of Sectigo certificates for SSL natively from within the platform in ServiceNow. You don't have to use two systems. That's the advantage of it. And in addition, you'd be able to integrate SCM managed certificates with ServiceNow's workflow engine, where if you want to create a ServiceNow ticket so that an engineer can follow up, you can trigger it when a certificate is about to be expired. So you can do lots of fancy things by leveraging ServiceNow's engine known as Integration Hub. You can create your workflow pretty much graphically and essentially bring in components to perform some actions at a certain interval and things like that. So it's very, very cool technology that we have developed in the ServiceNow integration portfolio of ours. In the DevOps world, there are a wide number of tool sets, as you might know already. We have classified them in two groups. One is the automation tools. The tools such as Ansible, Chef, Puppet, SaltStack, or even HashiCorp Vault, they are all related to automating your life in the DevOps world. We have created custom packages that focuses on automation in those software areas. Secondly, you are aware that there are a large number of orchestration tools out there in the DevOps world. Examples are Kubernetes, I already mentioned, Docker, Istio, and Terraform, and things like this. We have crafted packages that you could leverage to achieve certificate management automation using those tools that we have developed. And we're actually continuously doing more and more software tools and creating packages for them. So this is not going to be kind of a comprehensive list. More and more integrations will be coming down through the pipeline. Azure Key Vault, a lot of our customers like to keep the private key on Azure Key Vault. However, the Azure Key Vault have a capability to reach out to an outside CA and essentially retrieve the certificate. So I've integrated quite natively with that technology. So this is available. In addition to Azure, we plan to support Amazon, AWS, as well as Google Cloud. You know, they have similar technologies where you can actually store your private keys. So those two are on our roadmap, and we plan to natively integrate with our SCM system so that you can keep your private key part in there and leverage certificates from Sectigo. So that is going to be a fully comprehensive solution when we get to that roadmap. But today we do have the Azure Key Vault integration available to you. Finally, I mentioned the Citrix ADC integration via ACME. I just wanted to show you a little bit of a high-level architectural diagram. The administrator is actually going to issue a command via a tool that we have written. That tool is going to leverage Certbot, an ACME client, and essentially issue a certificate from Sectigo Cloud. But that is just not the value proposition. What we have done is we have scaled the operation up so that the tool would be able to reach out to multiple Citrix ADCs. So if you have, let's say, 10 of them, some customers have 90 of them, I've heard. So all you have to do is issue one command. That command is going to reach out to Sectigo Cloud, get the certificates, and push it to all 90 Citrix ADCs you have. So that's the scalability part that we have built in our tool. That is not available in the basic Certbot. So when we kind of integrate our solution with an open source one, we always look for value, right? And this is one of the values we're able to put in when it comes to Citrix ADC. So essentially that's it from the presentation part. Dean, we can move on to the other parts of this webinar.
Before we do that, we have a number of questions that you'll probably be able to answer. I guess the first one is the ACME API, is that version 1 or 2?
This is version 2.
Okay. Another comment was, we've successfully automated many certs through ACME, however, we struggle to audit them. We do not see them in the Cert Manager site, we only see the non-ACME certs. Where do we audit the list of which certs were done through ACME? Okay.
So on SCM, we actually have added a column to indicate whether that certificate was issued via ACME or not. I don't know whether it's visible in the default kind of sizing, but it is definitely there. I will follow up with you later on so that maybe Caleb can send a screenshot to identify where it is, but I know that we did build it in.
Okay, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Lemmer integration on the roadmap?
Can you spell that out for me, Dean?
Lemur.
Okay, it's not right now, but again, we always take enhancement requests from the community. Please lodge it in through Caleb, we'll look into it.
Okay. And the next one is, can ACME manage certs installed on EC2 instances in AWS?
Yes, if EC2 instance is running a Certbot or a similar kind of ACME aware tool.
Okay.
So if you're using Kubernetes, maybe you can run the Cert-Manager tool that is available. It's an open source tool, and that tool is capable of reaching out to our ACME server over the cloud.
Related to that, do you have any planned integrations for, say, direct integration with AWS load balancers, you know, where you don't have an EC2 instance, but you've got AWS load balancers running? You know, AWS makes it really, really easy to get their own certs there. It would be nice to have an option that was as easy to get Sectigo certs.
Yes, you're absolutely right. They make it very, very easy. On our roadmap, you have seen that we plan to integrate with their KMS, right? Key management system. During that time, we will look into extending it to the other assets that they run on AWS.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question is, we have used WinAcme on Windows clients. Oh, I guess this is just a request. If you could demonstrate that, and then there's another request too about demonstrating any Windows clients, I guess, sometime at a later date.
Okay, sounds good. One thing that I must highlight here is that the RFC 8555 has a specific parameter called external account binding. They created that so that ACME could be tied to other vendors' certificate management system. And we have taken advantage of that. First, because it's part of the standards, and a lot of the open source ACME tools would be supporting it. However, because some of the tools don't really support it as of today, so we have to be careful when we select a tool. Let's say WinAcme, at the top of my head, I don't know whether it supports external account binding or not, but do check with that. If it supports it, then you'd be good. Otherwise, you have to select a tool that supports external account binding. The list of tools that we have and I've shown them in one of the charts, they all support external account binding.
And I just checked the Certbot site, and Certbot claims to support Apache on Windows, so they can install on Windows currently. They just don't support IIS on Windows because they're apparently still working on the integration with the IIS APIs.
I believe you're correct, Paul.
Okay, the next question is that we recently migrated off of ServiceNow to Team Dynamics, and he's interested if there's a workflow integration with other platforms than ServiceNow.
Interesting question. You'll always find requests going beyond what we do. I would like to hear about them and get the details surrounding your use case, and those kind of communication can be channeled through Caleb.
Okay, good. I think that was Chris Bongart. So Chris, if you could do that, if you don't have Caleb's contact information, maybe just ping Paul Caskey and he can provide that. The next one, there's a question about whether the DevOps tools you talked about, whether there's a website or contact to obtain access to those tools.
Yes, so again, please send the request through Caleb. We are looking into publishing some of these tools at various places, including GitHub, right? We're planning to open source some of them as well, but we can provide specific instructions to you via an email.
Okay, and then let me keep going through the chat here. Can you please point the official Sectigo Ansible role for Cert Manager?
I'm sorry, the question was about Ansible role?
Yeah.
Okay, again, if this is a technical question, I'll take it and get back to you with the specific answers. Caleb, would you mind noting it down, please?
Yes, I have.
The other was about a little additional information about the NetScaler integration, about single versus multiple ADCs. Do they need the integration with just a single ADC, or is Certbot by itself okay?
So what was that, Paul? Paul, you were a little bit choppy at my end.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was a question about the NetScaler integration and about whether that's just for multiple ADCs or just for a single ADC. And if they just have a single ADC, is Certbot by itself okay, or do they need the
Okay, good question. Good question. Exactly. So I wanted to clarify that with our tool, you would be able to roll out certificates to one or more ADCs. So that's point number one. If you want to use the standalone Certbot tool, Unfortunately, the default Certbot tool does not have a plugin to do the installation on ADC. That is something we have created at our end. And therefore, if you want full automation, you'll need our tool. But if you just want to have the certificate and manually go and install it on one server, you might be able to use Certbot by itself.
And is there currently an integration with the F5 load balancer?
The F5 load balancer is integration is achieved through our custom agent that I have shown in my chart. It's not going to be via Certbot.
Okay. And then there was a question about ACME credentials and how restrictive they can be. This person was interested in restricting ACME credentials to a single host name so that an ACME credential could only request a certificate for a.b.com, instead of, d.e.com,
Right. Okay, I know that ACME credentials can be tied to the organizational level or the department level, but whether you can tie it to the specific domains, I have to check it out. Caleb will take a question on that, please.
Will do.
And questions are coming in awfully fast. How
about
our wildcard search supported via ACME?
Yes.
Okay.
How about we move on to Nick's piece there, and then we can take all the questions after that. Sound good?
Yep, I think we were to the end of the questions, mostly anyway, that weren't support related. So yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Sorry, hi. This is Nick France here. I'm Sectigo's CTO. Been with Sectigo and previously Komodo for probably longer than I care to admit, somewhere over 17 years now. Caleb asked me to join this evening and chat briefly. Obviously, we're on the topic of automation. As Abul mentioned earlier, we know that we're already down to close to 1 year certificates at 398 days. But one of the things I've talked a lot to our various customers about, both our kind of reseller channel and our enterprise customers lately, is essentially this topic, which is the drive towards automation. And what I wanted to do is just give a little bit of background on where we think we might be going with this, and some of the other reasons, at least within our industry, as to why we're really trying to drive adoption of automation, and we're really trying to provide all these different features that Abul's listed and all the other questions and kind of requests that have come in. Obviously, this migration down to shorter certificate terms for public certificates, at least, we kind of knew was coming for some time. Google proposed a ballot in the CAB forum sometime last year, which ultimately failed. It didn't pass because it didn't get enough CA support. We were actually one of, I think, only 2 or potentially 3 CAs that actually agreed with the concept and voted yes in the ballot in the first place. I believe, and certainly we believe, that it is a security improvement to have shorter lifetime certificates. We saw historically a lot of problems when there were long-term certificates out there. We certainly used to issue them up to even 10 years. And any problems with that certificate, things like a migration from SHA-1 to SHA-2, things like increasing key sizes, in a lot of cases, they simply took as long as it took for the certificate to expire because customers were either reluctant or unable to or uncontactable. And for various reasons, these certificates were out there, potentially vulnerable, and had a lot of problems. And a shorter lifetime allows that natural life cycle to make sure that these problems don't last out there any longer than around a year, 13 months or so. So we saw Google attempt to pass that last year. And then kind of to all of our surprise, honestly, in February this year at the CAB Forum meeting in Slovakia, Apple announced that they were going to enforce this change. And as I'm sure you all know, and we've talked about, they required that change as part of their root program, which meant that you couldn't, or we couldn't, as a CA, issue a certificate longer than 398 days with like a caveat that says, oh, if you don't mind about the problems with Apple devices, then you can carry on using it. They made it a requirement of their root program, and so there were no workarounds, there were no ways to, to get around that or to skirt around it. So we've ended up at this point where there's 398 days, and we honestly believe, and I certainly believe, that that isn't going to be the end of it. That there are going to be further ballots, and perhaps, especially if you look at Google, who I don't think necessarily believe that the CAB forum always works to the intentions that they have. I honestly believe that in the next couple of years, we will see further reductions in public certificate lifetimes, whether that's a drop down immediately to something like 90 days, or whether that's a compromise of something around 180. We don't yet know, but we know that these enforcements of shorter certificate lifetimes are very likely to come. Now, as much as I agree with that, and as much as we agree with that, we do also understand that this adoption of automation is not going quite as fast as we would like, certainly not throughout the industry, I'd say. And one of the reasons we're trying to do all of these things is to try and help with that, to try and alleviate the pain of automation. But on the other side, we have the reasons that the browsers are pushing it, and obviously the security reasons that I've talked about before. But you have a number of other factors in play here as well. So there's kind of two other, I'd say, reasons for wanting this drive towards shorter certificate lifetimes. The first one is really the unknown. It's the security exploits, it's the vulnerabilities we see. We've hopefully all heard of Heartbleed that happened a number of years ago. Certainly a day I won't forget, because it actually broke into the news on my birthday. So walking into the office expecting hopefully a relatively quiet day, and it didn't turn out that way. And we had to talk to all of our customers at the time, probably most of yourselves included, and some of our very large automated partners, and the non-automated ones, of course, and say, hey guys, we have to reissue millions and millions of certificates now. And doing that was incredibly painful. Now, even back then, we had a few high volume customers, but there weren't quite the volumes that we see today through a lot of our customers. And we didn't have, I guess, as big a problem as you would have today. So we have to prepare for this idea. And what I've been saying to a lot of our customers, especially enterprises, is you have to prepare for things that we and that I cannot control. I don't want to have to, do another webinar like this in a few months that's basically saying, okay, well, we found out that there is a huge vulnerability with RSA, or there's yet another series of collision attacks that affect SHA-2. And we've been given a deadline to reissue every single impacted certificate, which is essentially all of them. And you have a deadline of a very short time to do that. I don't want to do that if I know that most of our customers are not in a position to be able to, in the best case, I would say, click a button and have all the certificates cycle, but certainly not have to do some of the things that we have seen over the past few years, which is, pulling in staff from other projects and putting thousands of man hours into a project that should really be automated. So I think that's one of the things that we all need to bear in mind, because it's something beyond all of our control, and it's something that can very much take us by surprise. The other kind of reason that a lot of the browsers and the trust store operators are using is what's happened fairly recently. There's been a greater number of mass revocation events. Now, many of these have happened for security related reasons, though not in the same way as something like Heartbleed or a break of one of the algorithms, because that obviously has a wider impact beyond just certificate authorities and PKI. But we're talking specific incidents within our world that have precipitated these mass revocation events. We've certainly had a few where we've had to do mass revocations. There was the one very, very recently, which some of you may have heard of, which was to do with, specifically to do with subordinate CAs and the ability to sign OCSP responses. It was discovered that a number of these subordinate CAs had incorrect key usages in them that not only didn't meet guidelines really, but also meant that they were vulnerable in a security sense to an issue whereby a subordinate CA could potentially sign OCSP responses for the parent CA, which ultimately means that in some of these cases, for example, DigiCert and Microsoft are partners, and Microsoft could potentially sign responses for all of DigiCert's customers, which obviously is a very bad thing. So there was a fairly big incident there, and a large number of CAs were affected, and a large number of their customers and their subordinate CAs. And one of the problems that was expressed by a lot of the browser and the trust store vendors, particularly Google and Mozilla, because obviously those discussions happen in public, was they had a lot of concerns about the speed in which these revocations took place. You can, if you're feeling inclined to do so, you can certainly read a lot of these discussions on Mozilla's Bugzilla, but you can see that there were a lot of, I guess, excuses provided by some of the CAs, and understandably so. I mean, we're all living in a very different world than we were 9 months ago, and that certainly impacts everybody's ability to do work. But when you have some of these customers and CAs saying, well, we can't change out these few thousand certificates for 6 months or for 9 months, when the official kind of deadlines in our industry guidelines for these kind of changes can be as short as 24 hours, and even at best maybe only 5 days, and especially compounded when this is a real potential security issue, a lot of questions have been asked and will continue to be asked by the trust store operators to ask why this can't be done quicker, why this can't be done in a more automated fashion. Now, I still believe that a lot of it is an education issue. There are, a number of our customers, and I think the industry's customers, that are not well understood, not completely by us, if I'm honest, but certainly not by these trust store vendors. I mean, if you look at someone like Google, they perhaps don't understand what a lot of our retail and our channel business would look like. Individual users, perhaps, members of my family who decided to get a domain at GoDaddy and a simple web shop set up. They don't always automate things. They haven't for many years. They may be doing this on some kind of resold hosting platform, and they're copying and pasting CSRs, and that's absolutely fine. It provides the function that they're looking for, but at the same time, getting hold of that person, getting them to go through this process, having them understand why they have to go through that process is a difficult problem that I don't think a lot of the trust store operators particularly understand, or maybe in some cases have compassion for. So we're kind of in this position where we're trying to, balance looking after our customers. Essentially, we don't want to have to force all of our customers to go through mass revocation events, and we want to protect them as much as we can and ensure that isn't painful for them. I mean, we obviously have yourselves as customers, and there can be a huge impact for things that can go wrong here. We have a lot of enterprise customers that run infrastructure, telcos, power companies, logistics companies, and problems with certificates can definitely cause them problems there. And so we want to protect them, but at the same time, we want to ensure that we're all kept up to these security standards, and these security problems can't cause us real world issues. So it is very much a balancing act. It is something that I think better education is needed on all round. I mean, we need to provide better tools and better understanding of how to do this automation and how to integrate it. But we also do need and very much appreciate the feedback from the real world. Really, a lot of these questions that I'm seeing scroll past, they're great insight for us into how we can better help, but also how people do things day to day. I've had some enlightening calls in the past few months with the hotel chains and the software that they use and how they integrate PKI and certificates with it. And it's something I'd never understand otherwise without speaking to the customer. So as Abul said, we definitely appreciate all the feedback. Hopefully all of the information and the tools that we can provide are going to give you all the ability to start seriously looking at automation. Although I do get the feeling within InCommon as a whole, you're actually quite well up on a lot of the automation, certainly more than a lot of the enterprise customers I've spoken to. And if we're able to build additional tools, or we need additional things, then please let us know, and we can send those through Caleb, and we'll look at those and we'll see what we can do and how much that can benefit other customers as well. But I really just wanted to kind of give a little bit of background from our industry perspective as to why we see automation as probably one of the critical factors and the critical tools that we need to drive to all of our customers, so that should we come up against a mass revocation event, or should Heartbleed 2.0 spring on us on a Thursday afternoon tomorrow, then we are all hopefully in a position whereby the pain of making these changes is very much minimized, and the idea of certificate management and having to send people out to manually install certificates is hopefully a thing of the past. So I'll leave it there. I hope it's been a little bit of a useful background, and if you've got any more questions for now, then please ask here, and indeed if any come up after this webinar, I'm sure Caleb's nice and easily contactable, and he can pass those on to Abul and myself if needs be.
Absolutely. And just as everybody knows, I've been recording a lot of these questions down, and anything that needs to go back to the upper management and talk about, I'll definitely get some information back to everyone as well. So, shall we take on some more questions?
Yes, so somebody, so a lot of calls for automation, a lot of interest in automation. Several folks would like the information about automation options in one place, so they can go browse the documentation and see what's available. Someone asked about certs in virtual appliances or other systems without easy ways to get a file in, or without an API. Is there any thing you can do there? I can't think of anything, but what do you guys do about situations like that?
Yeah, so we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. With ACME, obviously we can cover a large varieties of devices, but then there is always these odd ones or less utilized ones for which we have to craft a little bit of a custom solution, like the tool that we have written for Citrix, right? So we're open to it. Obviously, we cannot do everything in one day. So let the requests come in, and we'll look into it, prioritize it, and put it onto the roadmap.
Okay. And Abul, could you just take a brief minute to talk about, if you're the one to talk about it, the training or the training types of things that are going to show up in SCM eventually?
Oh, okay. Caleb, can you speak to that? Are you familiar with the? Yeah.
Well, I know that there are some videos coming down the road. These are definitely coming out. I know I've provided some videos for, at least with ACME, and if anybody needs some, Paul, if you verify that, do you still have the ACME video, or should we post it somewhere?
You did send it to me. I think we decided we didn't post it because it was going to show up in SCM, and then
okay.
But we didn't know the date at the moment, so we
Yeah.
could post those somewhere if we needed to. But
yeah,
if those are the same videos that are going to show up in SCM.
well, there are the video that I provided you is not dubs or anything like that. It's literally just a quick video on how to use and set up ACME. But there are going to be other videos that we're going to be providing, and hopefully connecting them directly through SCM. So that way you just log into SCM and you'll be able to get into these videos and help you a little bit farther. Plus, we're going to get, I think what we're going to do is try to consolidate a lot of this documentation as well, by the looks of things, that everybody really wants to do. And then if we could do an automation kind of setup, and then we'll get that down for everyone as well.
Yeah, I know documentation, I think, is one of the things we're looking to sort of consolidate. We've had several questions about that just recently, very recently. Another question was, I think, was about general support. What kind of help is available? Well, certainly I can, support.sectigo.com has lots of ways to get help.
Most definitely.
Does ACME support network appliances like Palo Alto or Cisco?
So most of the networking gear actually support the EST protocol better. I know some of them are adopting ACME. Again, ACME is a standards-based protocol. We have complied with the standard. So if those devices have an ACME client, they can easily talk to us as long as it supports external account binding feature.
Okay. Do you have or are you planning anything that would work with Oracle Wallet?
No, I mean, we haven't really considered to explicitly support or test that product at this time, but we're able to do it. We can put it on our roadmap if there is sufficient demand for it.
Okay, I'm just going down the list of questions. Do you have a relationship to Certbot?
Well, Certbot is written by Electronic Frontier Foundation. They're a non-profit organization. We have a very healthy relationship with them. We actually support them any ways we can, because one of our philosophies at the corporate level is to essentially support the industry. Nick France has spoken to that quite broadly. And yeah, we do support EFF, who owns Certbot.
Great. Do you have any demo videos for the ServiceNow integration?
We have some videos, but those are mostly for internal QA type of videos. But I think we'll end up building one that is shareable across the customer base, or that is on our to-do list.
And briefly, the ServiceNow integration is to facilitate getting user certs deployed to your users. Is that right?
Yeah, so anything that you can do in SCM from the certificate lifecycle management perspective, essentially issuance, replacement, renewal, and revocation, those kind of tasks can be done from the ServiceNow app, right, natively, without leaving the ServiceNow portal. So that's the advantage of it.
So that works for both SSL and user certs, obviously.
So right now, because this is our first MVP release, we focused on publicly trusted SSL certificate as well as private SSL certificates.
Okay.
At a future date, we're going to expand on supporting other types of certificates.
Okay. Another question. I think these are all coming down to generic ACME client questions. So for the questions about specific load balancers, I think it's fair to say that if Certbot doesn't support that load balancer, then that load balancer just needs a client that supports the external, what was it, client binding?
Yeah, external account binding. You're right, absolutely, Paul. Yeah, so I've listed about 5 tools in my chart. Those are guaranteed to work because we have tested them, but there are 150 other tools. So we did not have a chance to test them all or vet them all. But the rule of thumb is if that tool supports external account binding, chances are it will work.
Okay. Oh, we have a great question here. This is awesome. Keith, you get the prize for the day. So the question is, my understanding was that assurance of publicly issued certs required at least some degree of manual intervention. How do these automation methods fit in with assurance compliance?
Well,
I will happily try and field that question if you like.
Yeah, please, Nick.
Yeah. So I understand the intent of the question. It's basically there are certain certificate types, the OV and the EV, which do obviously require additional validation, and by design, some steps in that process does require manual intervention. So with both of them, there's essentially a telephone call is needed to a publicly listed number for the organization in order to verify, essentially out of band, so beyond a simple API call or a simple certificate request, that the organization's details that we're going to put in the certificate have in fact requested this certificate. And in things like the case of EV, we do verify the individual, or we have to be able to verify the individual, and that they are able to, you know, sign and attest to the subscriber agreement. So yes, there absolutely is manual intervention required for those certificates. However, the way we and other CAs offer these certificates through tools like SCM allows us to only have to do those checks periodically. So SCM in particular is basically makes you, as our customers of SCM, what we would technically call an enterprise RA, or enterprise registration authority. So what we're essentially doing is we're verifying your organization details, and we required to re-verify that information periodically. For EV, it's every 13 months. For other types, it's currently at 27 months, so 1 and 2 years. We verify that at one time. And then because we give your account the ability to only request certificates for that fixed set of subject information, and obviously this is separate to the domain validation, because it's for that fixed set of information, and that's all you can issue for, we can basically issue those certificates immediately, as you've all experienced requesting OV, you know, every single day in their thousands, because it is only you requesting it and you are made an enterprise RA. If you wish to have different details in there, then that will need to go through our validation team, and they will have to revet those details. And yes, there will be manual intervention. But ourselves, as well as most of the other CAs, you know, use this system called the Enterprise RA, so that we can provide automation for other certificate types beyond just DV. So we can do them for OV and EV, and we do them using this system called an Enterprise RA, or Registration Authority.
Great answer. Thanks, Nick. Next question is another ACME Certbot question. I think I know the answer to this. Is it possible to use Certbot or ACME to get a certificate for a machine with a private IP address and that does not resolve externally? I think the answer is it depends on the certificate you're getting and the domain that it represents, but I'll let Abul.
Okay, yes. So next month in October, we will support ACME for private CA. Okay. And the reason we're doing it is to address this kind of a scenario where you have a web server, it's not internet facing. It could be other types of servers as well. You'd be able to use ACME to reach out to your private CA. There is no requirement to do DCV or anything like this. You would be able to obtain the certificate based on your access and credentials in SCM. So that will take care of issuing certificates from the private CA.
And for the rest of you, private CA is not something we currently offer in the InCommon Cert service, but it's something we're looking to add. We've historically not had a lot of demand for it, but that is likely to change due to things like this, ACME for private CAs, not to mention Internet of Things as we start to issue certs to devices. You know, obviously Sectigo can't publicly attest to the fact that a certificate was issued to printer 1234, you know, so
just to expand on that a little bit, if I may, though, because it is kind of a common question that we get, not just directly related to ACME, but in the space in general. Obviously, as you suggested, we can't issue certificates for private domain names or non-unique names, so anything like .local or private IP addresses, if the IP address is within the certificate itself. That's kind of the critical thing here. So if you require a certificate that has a subject alternative name with an IP address of 192.168.something.something, then we cannot issue that because it is not unique and it can't be issued from a public CA. However, if you have a DNS name pointed to that private IP and the DNS name is within a public namespace. What I mean by that, it's some subdomain of you know, an ICANN registered domain. So under .edu or under .com or .net, then we can still issue that, but there is no requirement for that fully qualified domain name to actually resolve outside of your own infrastructure. So I mean, I have my own system set up here at home. I have my own domain name for a bunch of things, and you know, my printer and my file server are on host names that will not resolve in the outside world. They only resolve on my internal DNS servers, and I have valid certificates for them. In terms of how that works with ACME, obviously you have to do the challenges to prove the domain ownership, but they can be done, as I think a Bull had in, he said we use version 2 of the ACME protocol, so there's a number of challenges that can be performed, but you don't necessarily have to have those challenges performed directly on the servers that the certificates are being requested. You know, ACME and Certbot in particular and other clients support the idea that you can request the certificate on one machine, but perform the challenge on a machine that is actually accessible so that we can look at the challenge over the public internet, but that doesn't mean the server the resulting certificate is to be installed on needs to be accessible. And again, this applies outside of ACME really, but it's obviously a question that comes up a lot, and I just felt warranted a little bit of clarification that if it's for under a public namespace, we can issue it, but it does not need to be publicly accessible or publicly resolvable.
Thanks again, Nick. Last thing wasn't really a question. It was just someone that was imploring you to help encourage ACME support in the various appliances that are out there, like we've mentioned, Cisco, Palo Alto, F5, and so forth, by making some kind of RFP boilerplate or other kind of language available. So I don't know, are you doing anything actively to work with the appliances to encourage correct ACME support directly in the appliances?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we are working with the open source community. So that's like one thread. And we are also working with the DevOps community. We worked with Kubernetes Cert Manager, as I mentioned. We're also looking into other prominent providers, their work in progress, which means that our goal is to essentially make ACME everywhere, right? So it helps us, it helps everybody actually, it helps the ecosystem. So we have a broader plan for this, but things are not going to pan out in a day or two. We all will have to be a little bit patient because there's a lot of things out there.
Okay, great. Let's see if there's any other questions. Did I hear printer support? No, I was just using that as an example of an Internet of Things example. There's far more interesting things for Internet of Things, like my refrigerator maybe, or some of the light bulbs in my house, or I don't know. Abul, what do you see coming for Internet of Things?
For Internet of Things, remember those certificates are privately trusted, right? So you'll have your own private root, one or more issuing CAs. From there on, you would be able to issue certificates. The IoT devices contain certificates to be able to authenticate to other servers or to other IoT devices. They might need code signing certificate that are privately trusted. They might need a certificate that would be used to essentially upload data to a server over an encrypted tunnel, for example. So those are the requirements. So primarily those would be device certs of kind of a lightweight vehicle, essentially. So other than that, it looks like any other X509 certificate. We do have an IoT manager product, which is different than the SCM product that you are used to seeing. And that product is currently available, and you can leverage it to be able to issue certificates to devices in bulk, right? So we build a bulk mechanism. IoT devices usually come in high volume, tens of thousands, even millions. So we made sure that our IoT manager portal is capable of keeping up with the high volume batch processing and those kind of stuff.
Okay, and that was perfect timing, Abul, because we're at the top of the hour. So thank you very much for the information, and to Nick and to, excuse me, Caleb also. This has been very informative. Thanks for everyone for joining us and for your great questions, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.